Dark Souls, Dark Souls 2, Dark Souls 3. What comes to mind when you hear those words? Some might say the world design, some might say the atypical storytelling, some might say the pain of fighting through enemies and dying over and over again as you try to get good. Others immediately have their favorite and hated bosses flash before their eyes. Today we're discussing the latter as we go through ranking every boss of the Dark Souls trilogy. Before we begin, a few notes to keep in mind. Number 1, we're not covering changes made to boss fights after entering New Game Plus. If those elements were important for the boss fight, they would have been included in the base playthrough. Number 2, we'll be going over these fights in progression order for the most part. I'm not interested in covering how the Dancer of the Boreal Valley is balanced when you fight her as your second boss. I'm more interested in the side bosses that appear at certain points of progression and may spike up in difficulty for odd reasons. Take the Stray Demon, for example. As such, we'll basically focus on mandatory bosses and throw in the odd side boss as they become available during normal progression. We'll also avoid DLC content until after the base game. Number 3, we'll be scoring the positives and negatives of each boss fight to reach their overall score. This works by starting each boss at 0, and every positive and negative takes the score up or down. Each point is largely going to be about how something is implemented on a conceptual level regarding the design of the boss and dynamics involved, but we will make note of bosses with something noteworthy from time to time. We won't go over every possible move and whether it works or not, but we will go over anything that radically affects the fights and if the movesets are varied enough given the boss concept, implementation, and placement in the game. Not every specific element, but the general view of the boss fight in context of what that element adds to the fight in general, for good or ill. We'll get several different points as we go across different topics, so see each boss section for greater details on why something good for one boss can be bad for another, or why something should be considered notable. We also will not be counting any baseline properties as positives, such as accurate hitboxes, fairly telegraphed movesets, and if the boss looks cool. It's more about the mechanics, gimmicks, and concepts of how the fights work, not if they meet the bare minimum set by the franchise. Number 4, we'll be looking over various tier lists at the end to see where each boss is and how they compare to others in different ways. Stay tuned for that as I expect a fight that should be entertaining. Number 5, we'll be looking at each boss fight from each of the 5 basic builds in the game, those being glass cannons, tanks, miracle bros, pyromancers, and sorcerers. We'll not be including weird builds as they radically alter the baseline experience of the game and boss encounters. We'll also not be doing anything online and will only summon where appropriate given the enemy number during the boss fight. Number 6, we won't be employing any cheese strategies that involve abusing the AI or causing skips. Getting Dragonrider to fall off the platform doesn't say much about the fight besides he can be baited to the edge like a moron. And finally, number 7, an apology. I had a setting that was set wrong in my recording software when cataloging these fights, so apologies for the video quality not being up to par for this video and the fights in general. I had thought to re-record them, but I don't want to play through each game another 5 times just to fix the video quality. The points being made are more important than the actual video quality of the fights. With all that out of the way, let's get into it. First up is the Asylum Demon. Starting with the positives, the gimmick of this fight allows us to escape when we're under-equipped for the fight if we're observant enough to notice the open door. On our second encounter, we can deal critical damage to the boss with a plunging attack or spam spells from above. This lets us know not every boss will be as difficult if we're observant and take advantage of our environment. If we abuse the gimmick in this way, we'll also be punished by having our platform destroyed. As far as the boss moves are concerned, it has a varied move set that is appropriate given this is the introduction to the game, so things are kept simple. All hits and combos by the boss also have a hard time killing in a single use or combo, as we often have enough time to escape or recover after each attack. The only difference is when abusing the gimmick and being punished for it, which usually gets us near death. This works given the tutorial nature of the boss and exemplifying what we can do and what happens when we do it too much. Now for the negatives. It is possible to miss the door or ignore the door, and that leads to having issues fighting the boss effectively with no gear besides a broken weapon that is extremely weak most of the time. We also have the issue that the first encounter is always going to have a weaker player on every new game run because we don't have our gear until after we escape or get killed by the boss. This stretches the fight out unnecessarily and makes starting characters have to go through the motions to fight the boss properly. Next is the Taurus Demon. The positives include the gimmick allowing us to plunging attack the boss repeatedly with good timing and positioning. The 2 archers up top help us to notice the plunging attack position and alternative arena if we pay attention and listen for their audio cues. We can choose to fight the boss along the walkway, or we can bait him back to a typical arena area where the archers are. The boss doesn't immediately attack us, which gives us time to deal with the archers and set up. As was implied earlier, the boss can jump up to our location to prevent us from spamming projectiles to defeat him. This boss also has an appropriate moveset given his position in the game, as the second boss will most likely face. Moving to the negatives, the area has several points where we can be knocked off to our death. It is also possible to get stuck at the ladder and pounded into dust by the boss without escape. The knockbacks from the boss's attacks delay melee combat significantly, as he will constantly push us away from him, making melee builds take longer to deal any damage to him if hit or blocking his attacks. The boss is also able to damage us just by stepping close enough to us. Next is the Belfry Gargoyles. The positives include that the boss doesn't immediately attack on our first attempt, giving us time to set up. Solaire as a summon is incredibly helpful for this first multi-boss encounter. The first gargoyle is more aggressive than the second, letting us fight it while baiting out the other's flame attack often. The boss health bars are relatively low compared to previous bosses to account for multiple targets. The unique tail removal allows us to negate certain attacks. The moveset for the boss is also varied enough given its placement. As for the negatives, the arena has death pits on two sides. The gimmick can slow combat down when trying to attack one gargoyle, while the other is breathing fire over top of them. It's possible to get trapped in the corners near the bell tower and be slapped or burnt to death. The bosses can combo us to death as well. The main gargoyle is very mobile, so predicting when it will do certain moves can become an issue. An additional negative because of the mobility is that builds often miss their attacks due to the boss's maneuverability across vertical and horizontal movement. Next up is the Stray Demon. I have no positive points for this boss, so let's get to the negatives. The gimmick of this fight requires that we take significant fall damage most of the time to reach the boss. Adding on to this fall damage is the fact that the boss can combo us after we take fall damage, as we may not have time to recover depending on the attack of the boss, leading to us dropping down and immediately getting killed after landing in some scenarios. We unlock this boss very early via normal progression, and we need an item in the area to progress to the Painted World through going to Anor Londo, so it's confusing exactly when we're supposed to fight this boss. Adding to this confusion is the fact that this boss is scaled horribly. He has extremely high health and damage compared to when we unlock him. He has more health than most bosses in the game, and is only outclassed by Ornstein Smough, depending on choice for Phase 2, Four Kings, Demon Firesage, Kalameet, and Manus. Fighting the boss is also incredibly slow due to his extremely high health at this stage of progression, not to mention his extremely repetitive moveset that repeats often given the other problems already listed. Now let's get to Capra Demon. First, the positives. We can use the plunging attack repeatedly to deal with the boss encounter, and we can use the stairs to deal with the maneuvering around the enemies. The boss health is relatively low to match with multiple targets. The moveset is also varied enough given the encounter. As for the negatives, we have two fast enemies supplementing a hard-hitting enemy, meaning we'll be overwhelmed unless we take out the dogs quickly. The tight space also makes maneuvering in the arena difficult, with 3 enemies on top of that. The arena is also bad for causing attacks to not go through due to hitting the walls, particularly when on the stairs. As an additional arena problem, the camera can have issues due to the tight space and trees getting in the way at times. Capra and the dogs also have immediate dodges that just delay the fight. Capra himself also has an issue where his attacks can snap around to hit us, making the telegraphing misleading when he goes for an attack, but suddenly turns to face us when he was facing away during most of the windup. Next is the Gaping Dragon. Positives first. The boss is slow, so he has several openings we can exploit to deal damage. He also has a varied moveset per his placement in the first third of the game. As for the negatives, the boss gimmick makes the fight slow as the enemy is huge. He has a large health pool, and his most punishable attack requires waiting for his long charge to finish before we can safely swipe at him. He also has a corrosive spit AoE that is massive and damages durability, making this move one of the most tedious he uses as it wastes time across avoiding it, repairing equipment if we need to, and then returning to attack. Next is Quelaag. Pros first. Her gimmick works well given the size of the arena and the room to move around the lava she spews. She also has a varied moveset per her staging in the game. The cons are that the explosion and lava moves deal insane damage. She also has strange tracking where she will awkwardly spin to face us during her regular melee attacks. Now it's the Iron Golem's turn. On the plus side, his gimmick allows us to knock him off the edge with careful positioning and timing. He can also be staggered for an extended period, helping us deal extra damage to him. His moveset is also varied given his placement at this point in the game. On the darker side, the arena has a death pit surrounding most of it. He can also use a grab to throw players into said death pits. Priscilla is next. As for the positives, this boss is totally optional until we attack her, allowing us to leave, or set up and get a few swipes in before she fights back. She also has low health given her gimmick of invisibility. Her footprints in the snow help to find her, along with her slow walking giving some breathing room to find said footprints. For the negatives, her invisibility can become an issue when she isn't in the snowy areas of the arena, and her moveset is very limited given her dynamics already. Next is the big duo fight with Ornstein and Smough. Positives first. The gimmick between the two works well given their tortoise and hare dynamic as they fight differently, creating a battle of patience and strategy. Options also keep this boss interesting given who we kill in Phase 1 dictates who we fight in Phase 2. The arena also provides room to maneuver and cover from charges and ranged attacks. Their health is adjusted during Phase 1 given multiple enemies. Phase 2 plays on the movesets of the Phase 1 enemy, giving us an idea of what we're going to deal with in Phase 2. Summoning help is available with Solaire and helps to split aggro in Phase 1. The moveset is also extremely varied given both bosses' basic and amped up moves. Switching to the negative, we can be comboed to death in a bad spot. The AoE attacks and charging in Phase 2 deal crazy damage and can double tap sometimes. Ornstein also has a unique problem of zipping around the arena, which can become a problem for breathing room and landing ranged hits. Next is Gwyndolin. The pros are that he has low health to account for his gimmick of running away so much, and there's cover in the arena for some of his projectiles. The cons include the inconsistency with spells passing through cover. Some of his attacks deal far too much damage per combo, usually being enough to kill a player in a single combo without health boosting or extreme damage negation. His moveset is also incredibly limited given his placement at the halfway point of the game. Now it's the Moonlight Butterfly's turn. The positives include the boss having low health, which makes the gimmick of it flying around less annoying. The arena can be used for cover for some of the spells shot at us, and the boss has a varied set of moves per its placement. The negatives include the gimmick causing a hard divide between ranged and melee characters, where melee characters have to dodge or block over and over until the boss lands where they can attack it, while other builds can spam spells against it. The gimmick also causes the difficulty to be largely dictated by build when it has such a stark contrast between melee and magic builds fighting it. Next is the Great Grey Wolf Seath. The pros of this fight include the gimmick of the fight working well as Seath becomes weaker the more damage we deal to her. This helps the fight feel like we're making progress and makes our job easier the further we get into the fight, with her slowing down and eventually limping. We also have cover in the arena thanks to Artorias' gravestone, and Seath also has a varied moveset per her placement in the game. The con is Seath's mobility as it can cause issues for builds to connect hits and keeping up with the boss when she bounces around or runs away so often. Next is the Four Kings. On the positive side, the gimmick works well given the size of the arena and the fact that this boss is essentially a DPS race, with enemies spawning on a timer. Being able to kill each of them individually helps to lighten the load when there are multiple. The other Four Kings not directly engaging with us will hang back and cast magic spells every so often, so we aren't rushed and overwhelmed every time multiple spawn. The summon Beatrice the Witch is very helpful to DPS down the boss quickly and split aggro. The moveset of the boss is also varied given its placement near the end of the game. The negatives include having to give up a ring slot to fight this boss, which damages the options for builds and weakens us in an arbitrary way. We can be comboed to death if multiple kings get too close when fighting. We also have a fifth king spawn if we aren't quick enough, breaking the whole point of the Four Kings gimmick. Next is Pinwheel. He is easy to deal with given his low health, and that's the only positive. As for the negatives, his clones can combo flame us if we let them stay alive too long. The boss is also so weak on his own that it hardly feels like a challenge unless we make bad choices on purpose or have really bad luck. His moveset is also incredibly limited given his boss dynamics. Next is Nito. Elements in his favor include his gimmick working well as Nito has friendly fire, which can help damage the skeletons that attack us, and we can manage how many skeletons we fight via aggro range caution and divine weapons killing skeletons for good. The arena also has cover. The boss is very slow, making ranged attacks useful when skeletons are down. He also has a varied moveset per the staging of this fight. The biggest problem with this fight is that we can be comboed to death due to the number of enemies we're dealing with. Next is the Scaleless Dragon, Seath. His only positive is that he has a varied moveset given he's one of the 4 Lord Soul holders. As for the negatives, his gimmick is annoying as we have to break a crystal, then we have to deal with Seath spamming crystals everywhere that build up curse. The gimmick slows down the fight when we have to back off a lot or use an item to avoid being cursed and losing the fight. The melee attacks with the tentacles are also difficult to dodge given how spastic and far-reaching they are. Next is Ceaseless Discharge. For the pros, the gimmick to knock him off the edge is helpful. He also doesn't attack immediately, letting us set up for combat. For the cons, his gimmick is incredibly annoying as his attacks have wide reach and deal heavy damage. You can be stuck trying to get him off the edge, but he'll spam his flame attack repeatedly instead. The flame spell going through walls is blatantly unfair, and his moveset is very limited given his placement and dynamics. Now we're up to the demon Firesage. I have nothing positive to say about it. As far as negatives go, fighting this boss is incredibly slow and boring given its high health. It's a straight copy of the Stray Demon with some number tweaks, which makes the boss less special than it already is. Its moveset is very limited given the boss placement, and because of it being a repeated asset. Next is the Centipede Demon. I have nothing positive to say about this boss either. As for the drawbacks, the gimmick is incredibly annoying to deal with as the boss has flaily moves that can easily knock us into lava areas. The arena is filled with mostly high damaging lava, which restricts our movement when fighting the boss. Pieces coming off the boss and turning into enemies isn't engaging when we're fighting in a lava arena that will kill us faster than the boss would with extra enemies. Its long arm attack is incredibly annoying to deal with given its reach and repetitive use of the attack when trying to bait it into a safe spot to fight it. The moveset is also very limited given the boss dynamics and placement. Now it's time for the Bed of Chaos. Surprisingly, I have a few positive things to note. One is that the gimmick progress is saved after death, unlike every other fight in the game. It also has a varied moveset as one of the lords of the game. Now for the negatives. The gimmick causes us to fall or get slapped into giant pits of death that suddenly appear. The giant limbs can also drag us into taking damage and can block pathways to the places we need to attack to defeat the boss. The extended reach of different attacks makes reaching the critical points incredibly difficult. The roots in the way to the bug itself just delay us that extra bit after dealing with everything and makes us vulnerable to flame attacks. Next is the original Lord of Cinder, Gwyn. For his pros, his gimmick allows him to be parried. He has some cover in his arena, and he has a varied moveset given his dynamic and placement as the final base game boss. As for the cons, I have to ask why he has a dodge, as this doesn't do much to add to the fight when he can jump away, and all it does is waste our time. Getting to the DLC, we'll start with the Sanctuary Guardian. On the good side, the gimmick of this fight gives it varied attacks that can span several different melee and ranged moves. It's also very aggressive, keeping tension high, with patience being the key to victory. On the bad side, it has a dodge it uses often to avoid damage. The mobility of the boss can cause issues with hitting it and causes a delay in combat. Some attacks can also go through or refresh faster than our healing animation, making it seem like the boss has counter moves for that specifically. Next is Artorias. The positives include his gimmick allowing him to buff unless we stunlock him out of it. His gimmick gives him varied attacks that can span several different moves, and he's very aggressive, keeping tension up, with patience being the way to win. As for the negatives, he has a dodge he will use often. His mobility can also pose an issue due to him moving away so often that it radically delays the actual fight. Next is the calamitous dragon Kalameet. As far as positives, he is very aggressive, keeping the pace up and requiring patience to defeat. Several slower attacks give time for other actions during them. His gimmick gives him a variety of attacks that can span several different melee and ranged moves. His grab works well as it's up to the player's skill to avoid it and deal with its effect if caught. He's a large boss with solid mobility that doesn't interfere with attacks connecting most of the time. His anti-range spamming attack counters player abuse when trying to snipe him from an elevated position. The only negatives to him are that some of his melee attacks can drag the player into a hitbox to cause damage, and he has a dodge that delays the trading of damage. The final boss to discuss for Dark Souls 1 is Manus. For the positives, his gimmick gives him varied attacks that span several different melee and ranged attacks. His gimmick also allows us to use a special item to parry his dark attacks. He's very aggressive, keeping tension high, with patience being key. He also has a varied set of moves given his placement at the end of the DLC. As for negatives, his gimmick requires an item we can easily miss or not have the resources to acquire to deal with the dark attacks. His melee spasm attack causes us to get juggled for the rest of it once we're stunned by it. Some attacks go through faster than our healing animation, making it seem like the boss has a counter. He also has a dodge for some reason. With that, we've wrapped up Dark Souls 1. Now we'll get into Dark Souls 2, starting with the last giant. His only positive is that he has a varied moveset per the staging of the game. For the negatives, the camera can screw up based on the movement of the boss and the lock-on points we use for melee attacks. His arm being ripped off leaves the boss wide open to be severely punished by the player during the transition. His gimmick causes us to have trouble tracking and hitting him sometimes when his two major damage points for melee builds, his legs, are also used for attacks where he pulls them out of reach often. Next is the Pursuer. The pros have his gimmick in the boss arena, including the option to damage him with ballista bolts. He's parryable, His grab dictates damage as his moveset is simple to deal with in the arena where we fight the official boss, and only becomes a problem once he buffs after the grab. He also has a varied moveset given his placement. The cons to this boss include we can fight him in an area with multiple enemies, adding the chance to be comboed to death, or be distracted from the actual boss. We also have a massive death pit off to one side in the real arena. He gains a tracking spell after his grab connects that deals intense damage, and he also has a dodge which just delays combat. Next is the old Dragon Slayer. His positives include being parryable, he has cover available, and he has a varied moveset. The negatives include his gimmick as a boss fight we already know without the dynamics of the original fight, making this a lazy copy and paste with minor differences. He also has a dodge to delay the fight. Next is Dragonrider. The pros include his gimmick allowing us to raise the platforms if we pay attention, negating the death pits in the arena. He's also parryable and has a varied moveset given his placement. For the cons, his gimmick with the death pits leads to an exploit, or can make the fight harder just because. He can also be shot down to 1 HP from outside the arena, making the fight a joke when we enter. Next is the Flexile Sentry. On the good side, the gimmick is well done with each side of the boss having different movesets. There is cover in the arena in the middle, and he has a varied moveset in general. On the bad side, the water slowly rising to restrict movement feels like a punishment for not beating the boss when you're already failing by the time it rises high enough to matter. Next up are the Ruin Sentinels. For the pros, their gimmick allows us to fight them one at a time on the first platform to mitigate dealing with 3 at once. Their health is also adjusted given multiple enemies. They are parryable, there are summons that can help us split aggro, and they have a varied moveset to choose from. The cons include no dynamics between the enemies as they all fight the same. They can combo us given they have the same moveset and aren't balanced to be different or hang back. Fall damage in the arena can be a serious problem. Summoning also lowers our damage output given the online mechanics of Dark Souls 2 as a whole. Next are the Belfry Gargoyles. The positives first. We can summon help to split aggro, the health is adjusted given multiple enemies, the boss also has a varied moveset per its placement. Now for the negatives. Summoning help lowers our damage output, the boss can combo us given they have the same moveset and aren't balanced to be different, combat slows down when we have to wait for openings between multiple enemy attacks repeating over top of each other, there are death pits in the arena, the gimmick is also gargoyle spam, with all 6 potentially being active at once. Next is the Lost Sinner. The only positive is that she is parryable. As for the negatives, the fight becomes boring when we can only get 1 or 2 hits in most of the time before the boss's combos return or she dodges away. By the way, why does she have a dodge she spams so much? Her gimmick also requires an item we can easily miss, causing limited lock-on range and visibility during the fight if we miss the key we need. We can also lose lock-on when the boss jumps over us. Finally, the boss moveset is very limited given the boss dynamics and placement as one of the old ones. Next is the Rat Vanguard. The only positive is that there's cover in the arena. For the negatives, the gimmick is being spammed by rats with petrification build-up attacks. The arena statues can mess up our attacks connecting. The boss isn't special besides a mohawk and extra poison damage. The basic rats respawn infinitely. There is no summon available to deal with infinite rat spam. The rats often get in the way of fighting the real boss, causing tedium around the actual boss fight itself, and the moveset is extremely limited, even given its relatively early placement in the game. Now we come to the Rotten. The pros include the gimmick allowing us to remove his arms, but they grow back given enough time. He also has a varied moveset. The cons include the arena having fire pits that deal constant damage. The boss also hits incredibly hard per attack, making tank builds suffer uniquely due to heavy stamina loss without farming stamina or getting an uber shield. Next up is the Executioner's Chariot. The positives include the gimmick working well given the constant charge and the safe areas around the arena. The friendly fire helps to deplete enemy health bars when the chariot comes strolling by. There's also cover available per the gimmick that can be used for different reasons. As for negatives, we're spammed by necromancers respawning skeletons. The boss fight itself can be circumvented by shooting the chariot as it charges until it gets to low health, allowing it to dangle on the edge of the death pit until we knock it off. There are no summons to help deal with the skeleton spam. The skeletons can parry, the post-crash charge attack can't be blocked for some reason, and the moveset is very limited given the boss dynamics. Next are the Skeleton Lords. The positives first. We have summons available to split aggro. The enemies are parryable and backstabbable. The arena has cover we can use. Health is balanced given multiple enemies. There is some friendly fire in Phase 1, and they have a varied moveset per staging of the game. For the negatives, summoning lowers our damage output. The gimmick is just skeleton spam. The skeletons can parry. They can combo us to death. Combat slows down when we have to wait for openings between multiple enemy attacks repeating over top of each other, especially given the skeleton chase where they speed up to catch us during actions. Fighting similar enemies over and over for a boss when we already fought several of them during the run up to the boss only makes the gimmick repetitive and not special. Next is Covetous Demon, or Jabba the Hutt. For the pros, the gimmick allows us to distract the boss while we damage him with the undead in the pots. He also has varied moves per his placement. For the cons, the gimmick makes the boss take significantly reduced damage when eating at different points for some reason. Certain ammo doesn't work when breaking the vases containing the undead for the gimmick. His moveset can make him get into a circling loop where he'll drag us around with him when he moves. The gimmick also delays the fight, as he takes reduced damage from the gimmick, so we're better off to attack immediately and ignore the gimmick altogether. Next is Mytha. For positives, she is parryable. We can cut her tail off to negate tail attacks, and she also has a varied moveset per her placement. For negatives, her gimmick involves a poison arena that constantly applies to the player and heals her. The gimmick is only mitigated by an illogical decision to burn the metal windmill earlier in the level. The boss fight is delayed when the boss constantly heals, and when we're constantly losing health due to the poison. She also has a dodge for good measure. Next is the Orange Smelter Demon. His one positive is a varied moveset. His negatives include his gimmick having a small AoE damaging effect when buffed. He also takes significantly reduced damage when buffing, which just drags out the fight. Next is the Old Iron King. I have nothing good to say about him. As far as saying bad things, he has a tiny arena with death pits everywhere. His gimmick has melee builds waiting for the boss's cues to deal damage, as he is out of melee range by default. His moveset is also very limited, given he's an old one down the longest path to get to an old one. Next up is Najka. For positives, her gimmick works well given the burrowing, and the platforms that protect us from burrowing up a dark and smelly place. She can have her tail cut to negate tail attacks. The trees act as cover from her spells, and she has a varied moveset given her placement. As for negatives, she has a dodge that just delays the fight, and some spells can go through the trees. Next is the Rat Authority. For the few positives, the boss doesn't attack immediately, giving us time to set up. Friendly fire helps to stun the little rats. The moveset is also varied for the big rat dog boss. Switching to the negatives, there is no summon available to deal with the rat spam. The gimmick is smaller rats pecking us while we avoid the big one. The small rats inflict toxic very quickly. The acid AoE delays the fight for melee builds and breaks our gear quickly. Friendly fire hardly does anything since the small rats only take a tiny amount of damage when hit by the big one. The dog jumps around a lot, making it hard to connect hits. We can be comboed to death if we take too long to kill the little rats, which can be common given their small frames and the big one constantly attacking us. Having to manually aim melee attacks against the big one's legs makes them harder to hit than necessary, especially given he jumps around so much. Next is the Prowling Magus and the Congregation. Here are the positives. We can summon to split aggro. Health is balanced per multiple enemies. The enemies are backstabbable. They have a varied moveset, and there's cover. Here are the negatives. Summoning lowers our damage output. Combat slows down when we have to wait for openings between multiple enemy moves repeating over top of each other. The gimmick is a bunch of weak repeated zombies supported by weak casters. The boss healing delays the fight, and sometimes the backstabs won't work properly. Next is the Mega Spider, Freja. On a positive note, her gimmick with her heads works well as they are the weak points for critical attacks. We can summon to split aggro. The little spiders have small health pools. The boss also has a varied moveset. On the negative side, the gimmick falls apart when it's possible for both heads to be severed and the boss can still be alive, making her unkillable in that instance. We can be comboed to death. Summoning lowers our damage output. A torch can keep the small spiders away, but that requires us to give up a hand slot to do so. Combat slows down when we have to slap down the little spiders to efficiently fight and enjoy Freja herself. The boss taking no damage outside of the heads doesn't make sense on top of it all. Next is the Redditor of the group, Darklurker. For pros, Darklurker can be stunned out of duplicating and has a varied moveset. For cons, the gimmick of this fight involves duplicating itself with no balancing afterwards. There are no summons for this encounter. The boss can't be hit by melee while casting the airborne laser. Combat slows down when we have to avoid the spell spam once duplicated. And the boss can attack shortly after being defeated, which can cause a reset even though we already won. Next is the duo Dragonrider fight. On the good side, the gimmick allows us to fight the archer early if we get the main one to knock the platform down. The archer's health is absurdly small. We also have a summon available to split aggro. On the bad side, the gimmick is a repeated asset duplication with a minor archery bonus. Summoning lowers our damage output. We can be comboed to death when facing both of them attacking at once. Their movesets are not balanced as they share the same moves when the archer stops sniping. The moveset is very limited given the boss dynamics and repeated assets. Next up is the Looking Glass Knight. Per his positives, we have a summon available to split aggro, his gimmick allows us to stun him to prevent summoning, and he has a varied moveset. Per his negatives, summoning lowers our damage output. His gimmick with the shield becomes a problem when he can summon NPCs or players to help him. The boss summoning help prolongs the encounter and distracts from the actual boss fight. The gimmick with the shield as a shield can be an issue as the hitbox for his shield causes spells to bounce off him and melee attacks may not connect properly, even if he's not raising the shield or using it other than just holding it. Next is the Demon of Song. For positives, the fight doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up, and he has a varied moveset. For negatives, the boss taking no damage outside of the face and arms makes no sense. The fight also gets dragged out when we have to wait for the boss to reveal its only weak point. Next up is Velstadt. Pros include being parryable and can be stunned out of the Phase 2 transition. Cons include the transition to Phase 2 leaving him wide open to attacks for a long time, letting us skip a significant portion of Phase 2 as we wail on him. He also has an incredibly limited moveset given his placement. Now we're up to the Guardian Dragon. Pros include being able to cut its tail off to remove attacks with it and its varied moveset. Cons include the many flame attacks lasting for a long time with very large AoE range, causing significant damage in wide areas that lingers far too long. The fight is also massively delayed for melee builds as the boss flies away often and sits or flies out of reach. Next is the infamous Ancient Dragon. Positives first. The fight doesn't start immediately as the boss is optional, which gives us time to set up. He also has a varied moveset. For the negatives, the flame AoE attacks last a long time and will often kill in a single combo without extreme fire defenses. The fight is tedious because the boss has very high health. It's also tedious because the boss can spend a lot of time floating in the air and breathing fire attacks. It's also tedious because the boss takes reduced damage in the safest place to hit him, that being his legs. Some of his fire breath attacks are impossible to get away from in time once his telegraphing begins. Durability also becomes a problem due to the boss's defense buff for his legs and relatively low durability for most weapons in the game. Next up is the Giant Lord. His only positive is that we have some time to set up before engaging him. The negatives include the boss gimmick of fighting to the boss in the actual boss arena. The gimmick also causes us to have trouble tracking and hitting him sometimes when his two major damage points for melee, his legs, are also used for attacks where he pulls them out of reach. The environmental hazards from the flaming projectiles deal heavy damage out of nowhere. We fight the boss on a time limit, the camera can screw up based on the movement of the boss, and the lock-on points we use for melee attacks, and his moveset is incredibly lackluster. Next is King Vendrick. I have nothing good to say about him. As far as bad stuff, his gimmick is that he has stupidly high defenses unless we get several items that we can easily miss. Fighting him takes a long time given his high health, and all the required items needed to get his defensive multiplier in check. He hits incredibly hard, making his balancing absolutely stupid given the extreme damage he can mitigate and dish out. His moveset is also incredibly lackluster. Next is Throne Watcher and Defender. The pros include summons available to split aggro, and their health is balanced per multiple enemies. The cons include the gimmick making two bosses that can continually revive each other if we don't beat them down within the same time frame. Summoning lowers our damage output. The fight is delayed because the gimmick makes us have to fight both of them and try to kill them nearly at the same time. Otherwise, they will revive each other over and over. There are death pits around the arena. The bosses can combo us to death. The gimmick doesn't balance the movesets beyond one being a little faster than the other. The moveset in general is very limited, given this can be the penultimate boss fight of the base game. Next is Nashandra. Her positive is that she has a varied moveset. Her negatives include her gimmick of spawning clouds that drain health and curse us constantly. The boss can appear directly after Throne Watcher and Defender, stretching our resources thinner than usual. All of her attacks build up curse, and there are death pits in the arena as well. Next up is Aldia. I have nothing good to say about his fight. On the negative side, the boss appears potentially after Throne Watcher and Defender, and definitely after Nashandra, stretching our resources thinner than usual. The death pits remain. The gimmick makes fighting him tedious as the fire around him reduces damage taken for some reason, so we have to wait around for specific openings before we can deal real damage to him. On top of this, his moveset is very limited given he's a secret boss at the end of the base game. Getting to the DLCs, we'll begin with Alana. The pros for this fight include it doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up. We can summon to split aggro, and she has a varied moveset. The cons include her gimmick of summoning enemies of varied strength levels. Summoning skeletons prolongs the fight by distracting us from the actual boss. Summoning the Velstadt clone radically prolongs the fight against the actual boss, as we essentially have a second boss to fight when Velstadt is summoned, effectively doubling the difficulty at random. The opening to the fight leaves the boss wide open to significant damage. Summoning Help lowers our damage output. She can teleport out of sight and deal damage quickly afterwards, and she can summon enemies repeatedly. Next is the corrosive dragon, Sin. For positives, the fight doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up. We can cut off his tail to negate tail moves. His gimmick of hitting the spear in the boss to deal increased damage works, and he has a varied moveset. For negatives, durability can become an issue due to the boss's corrosiveness when melee weapons connect with him. He also spends a lot of time in the air, which prolongs the fight. Next is that fight with the gank squad. Positives include summoning to split aggro. The enemies are parryable and backstabbable. They have a varied moveset between the three of them, and cover is available in the arena. Negatives include the gimmick of fighting 3 aggressive NPCs at once that overlap between ranged attacks, status buildup, and high damage. Summoning lowers our damage output. We can be backstabbed, we can be comboed to death, we can be damaged while backstabbing others. Durability becomes an issue during this fight given how many hits are needed to take down all 3 NPCs. The Havel clone can heal himself repeatedly, the enemies can dodge, combat is prolonged when we have to wait for an opening between 3 different enemies attacking us, sometimes all at once, and the environmental hazards, the statues, are in the room that build up petrification. Next is the blue Smelter Demon. I have nothing good to say about this boss. As for bad words, his gimmick includes a small AoE damaging effect when buffed, he takes significantly reduced damage when buffing, he's a repeated asset but with magic now, and his moveset is very limited given his boss dynamics as a DLC repeat of assets. Next is the Fume Knight. Positives include being able to trigger Phase 2 immediately with Velstadt's helm, and he has a varied moveset. Negatives include the gimmick of the witches outside the boss arena that can heal him infinitely when in range if we don't use special items to destroy all 4 of them, even though we've had enough times to use too many items in the lead-up to the boss. He can also be tricked into avoiding his Phase 2 transition through baiting certain attacks. Next is Sir Alan. His positive is that he has a varied moveset. Negatives include that he can parry the player, and we have to wait until he stops this move to get back to fighting him. We fight him on a time limit. The boss is strangely immune to damage until he properly activates in the arena. Some attacks refresh faster than our healing animation, making it seem like the boss has counter moves for that specifically, even with appropriate ADP. He also dodges half the fight, dragging things out. Next is Ava. Her positives include cover being in her arena, and she has a varied moveset. Her negatives include her gimmick of being invisible until we progress the area and pick up a specific item. She jumps around a lot, making it harder to connect hits. She also has misleading attack patterns including running or jumping away, just to pounce on us immediately afterward. Next is the duo kittens, Lud and Zalin. The positives include summons available to split aggro. That's it. For negatives, the gimmick is 2 Avas. We can be comboed to death, the bosses jump around a lot, making it harder to connect hits. Waiting for openings between the 2, sometimes overlapping attacks, prolongs the fight. Misleading attack patterns include running or jumping away just to pounce on us immediately afterward. Summoning lowers our damage output. This encounter is just repeated assets but multiplied now. Summons will often take significant damage on the way to this boss given the extreme distance from summon sign to boss door. Durability becomes an issue given how many hits are needed to take down both bosses. The health regeneration buff for one kitty just prolongs the fight. And the moveset is very limited given the boss dynamics as a DLC repeat of assets already seen in the same DLC. We'll wrap up the Dark Souls 2 bosses with the Burnt Ivory King. The positives include summons being available to split aggro. We can choose not to summon and still have 1 Frozen Knight left over to help against the boss, and the encounter has varied movesets. The negatives include the gimmick of bringing Frozen Knights with us to deal with the opening spam that just delays the actual boss fight, and can be horribly imbalanced depending on the number of Frozen Knights we find, and at what point we fight the boss himself. We can be comboed to death. There is a massive delay in fighting the real boss because of the opening spam. Summoning help lowers damage output, and durability becomes an issue during this fight given how many hits are needed to fight the boss and his army. That's it for Dark Souls 2. Now let's get into Dark Souls 3, starting with Udix Gundyr. Positives include being parryable. His gimmick functions as a tutorial boss, works well as he shows bosses will have multiple phases and are parryable. We can slap him a bit as he gets up to fight, and he has a varied moveset. The negatives include the pus causing camera problems due to how flaily things become when the pus comes out. There's also a death pit in the arena. Next is Vort. Pros include that he can be staggered for a riposte. He has a varied moveset, and his gimmick is that he fights like an animal, which works given his fighting style of staying low to the ground and charging. Cons include nothing. I found no issues with this fight. Next is the Great Tree, the Curse-Rotted Greatwood. Positives include friendly fire helping to kill off the additional enemies in Phase 1. It has a varied moveset and is very easy to stunlock by destroying the sacks. Negatives include additional enemies in the arena that just serve as a distraction from the boss itself. The boss should be damageable everywhere because it's a tree, so it only taking damage from the specific sacks at specific times with specific types of weapons is frustrating to deal with, as we have to wait for the boss to activate its weak points. Next is the Crystal Sage. Positives include a summon available to split aggro. The gimmick works given the clones go down in one hit, and the magic color gives away the main sage. The boss has a varied moveset. The arena has cover to avoid the spells, and the boss is parryable. The negatives include the clones repeatedly appearing in Phase 2, and they can combo us to death. Next are the Monk Troop. The Deacon's positives include being parryable and backstabbable. Summons are available to split aggro. The curse spell can be interrupted. Enemy health is balanced per multiple enemies. Enemies aren't that aggressive, so this leans more towards the gimmick than toward all-out spam, and the arena has cover. The negatives include the gimmick of killing the Deacons over and over, becoming repetitive. It can be hard to hit the boss because of the number of enemies around him. The curse buildup being possible is annoying to deal with. The boss can be healed. We can be comboed to death in the wrong spots. The moveset is very limited given the boss dynamics, and combat devolves into a slapfest as there are so many enemies surrounding us at once. Next are the Abyss Watchers. Pros include summons being available to split aggro. The gimmick works well during Phase 1 as we have multiple enemies that we can get to fight each other, and the adds have low health. Friendly fire helps deal with the multiple enemies. The boss is parryable, backstabbable, and stunlockable. They have a varied moveset, and the health is balanced per multiple enemies. The negatives include being potentially comboed to death in Phase 1, and they have a dodge they use often, which delays the fight. Next up is Wolnir. His positives include the fight not starting immediately, allowing us to set up. He also has a varied moveset per stage of the game. The negatives include the Death Cloud being incredibly harsh. The gimmick is borked because he moves his hands to attack, leaving the critical points out of reach often. He can be poisoned and misted to death without activating him at all. He can summon skeletons to spam us. We have no summons for this encounter to help with the skeletons. His arms can drag the player around, including into his Death Cloud. The poise of his bracelets will dictate the difficulty depending on player weapon. Next is the Old Demon King. His pros include being staggerable for a riposte. The arena has cover players can use. He has a varied moveset per staging position, and the gimmick sort of works given he will give one last explosion before sitting in a weakened state until the fight ends. The negative is that some of his attacks can push us into positions to be tagged. The next boss is Sullivan. Positives for him are that his gimmick works given his clone preempts his moveset exactly, and we usually have enough time to account for that. We have summons available to split aggro. He is parryable and stunnable. He has a varied moveset. The fight also doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up. His only negative is that he can combo us to death. Up next is Aldrich. Things working for the fight include the arena having cover to use, and the boss having a varied moveset. Things working against the fight include the gimmick being cumbersome as we chase the boss around the arena while avoiding his mass arrow spam. He can heal. Some spells go through cover, which doesn't make sense. And combat can be prolonged due to the boss spamming spells that require us to run away or dodge constantly. Now we come to Yorm. Positives include being stunnable and can be staggered for a riposte. The arena also has a little cover for players to use. The negatives include the gimmick not working, as the weapon for the gimmick is inside the arena right next to the boss, and we have to equip it in the arena for it to be workable. The gimmick makes the fight trivial when it takes off a fifth of his health every attack, and he's usually stunned by it. His moveset is very limited given his Lord of Cinder status, and the gimmick attack taking full stamina and taking time to charge just prolongs the fight for no reason. Next is the Dancer. Pros for the fight are that she can be staggered for a riposte. She has a varied move set, and the arena has cover players can use. Cons for the fight involve being comboed to death, and the arena can cause problems for the camera given the angles we get and stuff getting in the way. Next is the Dragon Slayer armor. Positives include he is parryable and stunnable. The arena has cover we can use in the middle, and the boss has a varied moveset. The negatives include the gimmick with the Pilgrim Butterflies causing chaos during the fight when the boss himself is enough. We can be comboed to death, and there are death pits on each side of the bridge. Next is Dragon Failure Osiris. Positives include being staggerable for a riposte and a varied moveset. The negatives include the gimmick making the fight interesting in Phase 1, but afterwards devolves into a spaz fest when he goes feral. His charge attack has no telegraphing before it starts, and his breath attack has curse buildup. Next is Chad Gunder. Positives include being parryable and stunnable, a varied moveset, and the fight doesn't start immediately. The negatives include recovery time for some of his attacks are too fast to heal for many moves, and there's a death pit in the arena. Now we've reached the Ancient Wyvern. Positives include a varied moveset across all the enemies in the boss encounter. The gimmick only requires one plunging attack to defeat the boss, no matter what weapon used. There's cover throughout the arena, and the fight doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up. The Wyvern can also damage the Serpent Dudes. The negatives include the gimmick requiring us to complete an area without dying to a multitude of strong enemies before doing a single attack to the Wyvern. There are no summons to help. It becomes difficult to deal with overlapping attacks from the enemies and boss when they combo over each other. Fighting the boss regularly is tedious given the extreme health and defense it has. The plunging attack can fail due to boss movement or attacks knocking us off the edge, killing the player due to fall damage or causing a reset. The camera has issues when dealing with the Wyvern as it gets dragged around. We can be dragged into death pits due to the size of the boss. There are also death pits in general. Next is the Nameless King. His positives include a varied moveset. He can be staggered for a riposte. The gimmick involves each phase having different weaknesses and strengths opposite to the other, making this fight more dynamic while also allowing players to decide which phase to prepare for while keeping the challenge. The only negative is the camera can become an issue due to the mobility and speed of the boss. Next are the twin cripples, Lothric and Lorien. The pros include the boss being parryable, stunnable, and staggerable. The gimmick involves the magic user buffing the melee fighter, which works given the balancing of their moveset to never overwhelm us. The gimmick also involves Lothric reviving Lorien repeatedly, but not in the reverse, opening strategic options for how to deal with them both in different ways. The arena has cover we can use. Their health is balanced given the boss gimmick, and they have a varied moveset. As for negatives, I have nothing bad to note about this fight. Moving on, we've reached the last base game boss, the Soul of Cinder. Pros include an extremely varied moveset. He can be stunned. The gimmick works well to make a fight where every build is showcased and every build has a chance to deal with every other build type. The fight also doesn't start immediately, so we have time to prepare. The negatives include the boss being able to heal, parry the player. Some of his attacks don't leave enough time to heal in between them, and we can be juggled by the long combo in Phase 2. Getting into the DLCs, we'll start with the Gravetender and his pack of wolves. The positives include being parryable, stunnable, backstabbable, and staggerable. They have a varied moveset, the arena has cover, and the fight doesn't begin immediately, letting us prepare. The negatives include no summons for this encounter. The gimmick is a giant wolf, a guy, and more small wolves. The fight is prolonged due to several enemies attacking together and having to deal with different attacks overlapping. The mobility of the giant wolf causes issues for hitting him, and we can be comboed to death. Next is Freja. The pros for this fight include a varied moveset. The fight doesn't start immediately, so we can prepare. We have a summon available to split aggro, even if unembered, and the boss is parryable, stunnable, backstabbable, and staggerable. The negatives include boss healing, overlapping attacks during Phase 2, dodge spamming, the gimmick prolongs the fight with multiple phases, healing, and an additional enemy to distract from Freja herself. We can be comboed to death, and the fight is prolonged due to Freja being super agile and dodging often throughout Phase 1 and 3. Next is the Demon Prince. Positives include the gimmick causing Phase 2 to have different special moves based on the last demon defeated in Phase 1, giving players options to choose which they prefer to face. We have summons available to split aggro, they can be staggered for a riposte, the arena has some cover until it's destroyed, and they have a varied moveset. The negatives include the attacks overlapping in Phase 1 and potential for being comboed to death. Next is the Mega Dragon, Midir. Pros include a varied moveset, the fight doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up, and he can be staggered for a riposte. The negatives include the camera becoming an issue due to the movement during his attacks, and his mobility making it hard to hit him sometimes. Next is Half-Light. This fight has positives, and those of the boss being parryable, stunnable, backstabbable, and staggerable. The health of the enemies is balanced per multiple enemies, the arena has cover we can use, and the fight doesn't begin immediately, allowing us to set up. The negatives include the gimmick involving online spam or becomes regular offline spam. The fight is prolonged due to the long intro by Argo, then fighting a Church Guardian, then fighting the actual boss supported by an additional enemy that spawns later. The boss can be healed. They all have dodges they spam. The boss can parry and riposte us, and we can be comboed to death. Finally, we have Gale. The positives include him being stunnable, the fight doesn't start immediately, allowing us to set up. The arena has cover we can use, and he has a varied moveset. As far as negatives, there is nothing of note for him. With that, we've wrapped up the individual points to be made for each boss. Now let's get into the tier lists. Yes, I said lists, because things look interesting when we break them down in different ways. I'm not going to go over every single score for every boss, but I will mention noteworthy comparisons once we get through these lists. It's a lot of data to mention before I go over why it's interesting, so bear with me as I throw a lot of numbers at you. We'll start off with Dark Souls 1. As you can see from this chart, we have 12 bosses tilting toward positive, 4 stuck in the middle, and 10 that lean toward negative. That's a fairly even split. The highest rated bosses are Kalameet and Ornstein Smough tied for the top spot, with the Stray Demon sitting at the bottom. When we use the ranking by positive points, we can see Ornstein Smough retains the top spot, while the Stray Demon, the Demon Firesage, and the Centipede Demon tie for the bottom spot. When we flip to negative points, we see the Belfry Gargoyles, Capra Demon, and the Stray Demon tie for first place, while Seath, Nito, and Gwyn tie for last. Now let's go over Dark Souls 2. Here you can see we have 6 bosses leaning toward the positive side, 8 in the middle, and the remaining 27 fall down a steep cliff into the negative. This clearly tips the bosses toward the negative side for the majority of this game. The Flexile Sentry, Najka, and Sin are tied at the top of the list, while Lud and Zolin sit at the bottom. When we rank by positive points, we have the Skeleton Lord sitting at the top, and the Old Iron King, Vendrick, Aldia, and the Blue Smelter Demon sitting at the bottom. When we rank by negatives, Lud and Zolin sit at the peak, while the Flexile Sentry sits in the dirt. Now let's go over Dark Souls 3. Here we have 14 bosses leaning toward positive, 2 caught in the middle, and the remaining 9 leaning toward negative. This slightly leans more positive than negative as far as the bosses in the game go. You can see the top spot is held by the Crippled Twins, and the bottom is held by Wolnir. When we rank by positives, the top spot is tied between the Deacons, the Abyss Watchers, and the Twin Princes, while the bottom spot is tied between Wolnir, Aldrich, Yorm, and Osiris. When we rank the negatives, the top spot is held by Wolnir, while the bottom is tied between Vort, the Princes, and Gale. Now that you've had a chance to see these lists for each individual game, let's draw comparisons across the franchise. When we rank by score, we have 32 bosses leaning toward positive, 14 caught on the fence, and 46 leaning toward negative. This means exactly half of the bosses in the series have significant problems. The Twin Princes sit in the number 1 spot, and Lud and Zolin sit in last place. When we rank by positive points, Ornstein Smough tops the list, while the last spot is tied between the Stray Demon, the Demon Firesage, the Centipede Demon, the Old Iron King, Vendrick, Aldia, and the Blue Smelter Demon. When we go by negatives, Lud and Zolin top the list, while Vort, the Twin Princes, and Gale tie for last. Now that we've been over the rankings, let's check out the raw numbers themselves. As you can see, several bosses can have significant pros and cons that lift them up or drag them down. Notable examples include the Belfry Gargoyles, the Stray Demon, Ornstein Smough, the Rat Vanguard, the Skeleton Lords, the Gank Squad, Lud and Zolin, and the Deacons of the Deep. Ornstein Smough have so much going for their fight that they sport the highest positive rating of them all, and even their overall score is still relatively high given their drawbacks. Then we have the Belfry Gargoyles, the Skeleton Lords, and the Deacons of the Deep, where they have so many positives and negatives in totality that their overall scores hover around the middle of good and bad because of the sharp contrast between their positive and negative traits. Then we have the Stray Demon, the Rat Vanguard, the Gank Squad, and Lud and Zolin, where they have so many problems that they end up drowning whether they have any redeeming qualities or not. Here's some interesting points to note. Outside of things like the variability of movesets, summons being available, and having time to set up, the most common positive is that the gimmicks work across the games. The most common negatives are interesting. Dark Souls 1's most common negative is tedium in combat. Dark Souls 2's is the gimmick not working at all, and Dark Souls 3 is being comboed to death. Granted, the context for each of these points does vary from boss to boss and how the games handle different elements across the trilogy. I just thought they were worth mentioning because it's interesting to consider. To be fair, I would not have these lists as definitive for how I would rank the bosses. This is based purely on how each individual element of a fight adds or takes away from the experience. They don't account for how well each individual element is implemented or how deep each element is, and if that scales the fight up or down significantly or multiplicatively, like every move, hitbox, and AI being designed particularly well or poorly, and how deep the design goes as far as variety and dynamicism versus tedium and fairness. If we were to adjust the list based on those values, and add in some flair for animations and style, things would be very different, but I think the extremes would largely stay where they are. The middle ranges would certainly shift, and a few oddball choices would probably move around as well, given the way this ranking was largely constructed on the individual elements within the fights, not the total package in context of the series as a whole, and how some elements really do make the fight great or terrible within a single element. Gale is a great example, as he doesn't have a lot of dynamics for his fight, but his moveset and pacing make him one of the most engaging bosses due to the rhythm of combat and how his moves are balanced. He's in the sweet spot where he's fast enough to be a threat, but not so fast where we don't have room to recover and breathe, while also avoiding anything that draws the fight out unnecessarily, like healing, dodge spamming, or having multiple enemies to deal with. He is perfectly paced, and avoids a lot of the problems with many gimmicks and balancing choices other bosses have, which allows the core combat gameplay to shine through, as Gale has nothing getting in the way of that system. He's a strong fight because he has no baggage from a gimmick, nor any imbalanced parts to his moveset, or additional enemies to deal with while fighting him that aren't balanced appropriately. At least not unless we're trying to head toward the Ring Knight, but that's largely beside the point. When we look at the opposite end, we have something like Ludden. This fight is a terrible example of what this series can offer, as this boss is a repeated asset doubled up for additional difficulty, on top of overlapping attacks that deal extremely high damage. Then we add additional problems like the pathway to get to the boss weakening us and our summons, the last cat having health regen for some reason to arbitrarily extend the fight, general wasting of time as we wait for an opening when fighting two of the same enemy, and the other game-specific issues to Dark Souls 2, like durability being weaker, summons affecting raw damage output, and others. It's simply one of the biggest anti-Dark Souls types of fights when you look at what the series excels at. The biggest problem with a lot of fights is the implementation of gimmicks. The Twin Princes fight works well because their gimmick is balanced per the movesets of the two of them merging together, and the health balancing to avoid a tedious grind unless someone's uniquely terrible at damaging Lothric. On the flip side, we have the gimmick of the Skeleton Lords. This gimmick is just fighting a few skeletons who turn into a ton of skeletons. We're just slapping down multiple weak enemies over and over until they're all gone. There's no dynamic beyond when we spawn the extra skeletons. The Rat Vanguard is even worse, as they spawn infinitely, and only go away when the Mohawk boss is killed. Even then, the special rat isn't very special compared to the others. This sort of thing is where we get so many problems with the different gimmicks we see across the games. The devs were simply trying to make a unique boss encounter without thinking if it plays to the series' mechanical strengths. Fighting hordes of enemies isn't exactly something that the Souls series excels at. Yeah, it's doable, but it's usually much better when fighting individual enemies with interesting movesets and dynamics isolated to them. Two enemies can work together as well to make the gimmick more interesting, whether by adding on to each other like the Twin Princes, or by contrasting each other like Ornstein Smough. The strong elements are balancing the multiple enemies in some way to create different strategies, like blocking Ornstein with Smough to slap the fatty, or by leading Ornstein away from Smough to take the poker down. Ornstein Smough is probably the most realized gimmick, with the most interesting dynamics to the fight across the trilogy. We have so many options for strategies, as well as options given we can choose who we focus in Phase 1, which impacts who we fight in Phase 2, and what we get out of the boss fight by the end. The Ornstein Smough fight is the most dynamic fight across the trilogy due to the Phase 1 contrast of the two, the decision to decide who we want to face in Phase 2, and how their loot is divided depending on who we kill last. We have dynamics and options across the whole encounter, which keeps the fight interesting during each run. If I had to pick my top 3 best and worst bosses, it would go Gale, Ornstein Smough, then Kalameet as my number 1, 2, and 3 for the best bosses to fight. Then I would put Ludden, the Gank Squad, and the Bait of Chaos as my number 1, 2, and 3 for the worst boss fights of the trilogy. As for the other 86, I can never settle on how much I like or dislike them exactly. However, a few highlights include Artorias, the Fume Knight, the Abyss Watchers, the Twin Princes, the Nameless King, and the Soul of Cinder, while I would condemn the Capra Demon, the Centipede Demon, the Stray Demon, the Skeleton Lords, the Congregation, the Belfry Gargoyles, Darklurker, the Ancient Dragon, Vendrick, Aldea, the Rat Authority, the Rat Vanguard, the Grave Tender, and Half-Light as extremely annoying or pathetic to fight. Sorry I didn't rank every boss in the way you probably wanted, but my opinions shift for the majority of these bosses over time, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worst, so it's hard to make a video without contradicting what I said previously. I probably did it again today, but the main good ones and bad ones usually stay consistent. For now, let me know in the comments what your top picks for the best and worst bosses are. I'm always interested to see our differences of opinion when it comes to what we love and hate, and why we think that way. With that, let's end the video. Thank you all for watching this far, and I hope you learned a thing or two and may have changed your opinions on some things. I know I certainly did as I went through this process to rank the bosses in different ways. This was a fun romp through the trilogy again, but I think it may be my last major video on it. I've covered this series to death, so I'm not sure if there's anything else I'd want to do with it. For now, consider this my unofficial final Dark Souls video. We'll see if that changes in time. For now, I'd like to thank you again for watching, and God bless.